and it starts with energy. What are we going to do about the energy issues that we have? I think every solution has many different elements to it. So when you think about energy, obviously small modular reactors is a green element of that. Wind power, photovoltaics, solar power, geothermal technology. There's solutions there, but it can't meet the load because of the land requirements for that. Fuel cells, a real good opportunity with fuel cells and utilizing it. Again, think about the geographic area that you're in and what's most prevalent from an energy resource, whether it's hydro, fuel cells, small modular reactors, utilities doing what they can. I'm surprised the utilities haven't gotten into the critical infrastructure industry more than they have, because it's another business line. I look at as convenience power and pure power. I think the utilities are missing the boat on opportunities in the critical infrastructure industry. Hi, this is Peter Curtis, PMC Group 1. You're watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast.
Hi, it's Joshua Feinberg, host of the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast. And today I have a very special guest joining me. I am welcoming Peter Curtis, who is CEO and Chief Strategist for the PMC Group. Peter is headquartered out of Houston, Texas. They also do business all over the US and all over the globe. Peter's a longtime mission critical practitioner, author, educator, and founder of PMC Group's Smart Solutions platform. His background spans data center operations, reliability engineering, SOP development, operational technology, workforce training, and knowledge transfer. He's been discussing AI's role in the market for a long time for mission critical operators for several years, well before the AI boom. And he's been spreading the word on best practices in and around the data center industry since well before even the current AI boom. He centers on preserving institutional knowledge, reducing human error, improving operational readiness, and applying AI to operational intelligence rather than just replacing people. Peter, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, it is my pleasure to be here, Joshua. Thank you for inviting me to speak today, and I look forward to our conversation.
I'm really looking forward to it as well. Now, Peter, you've spent decades in mission critical facilities and digital infrastructure. What's the biggest change you've seen between when you first got started and where we are now?
Wow. My journey really started when I was about 7 years old. And working for my dad in the garment industry, we had the ability to make dresses, and with making dresses, we had lots of machinery and lots of maintenance to do on the sewing machines and the button machines and all the things that you need to get a production out. And it was very interesting to learn as my career progressed, the journey of what that meant from a maintenance standpoint of keeping machinery up and running. And then later on, what happened was I was going to school, and during that time, my brother had muscular dystrophy, and I had to write a standard operating procedure when he came home on how to use a respirator. So that set me further into the mission critical mindset. And then while I was going to college, I was driving an ambulance, and we would do our rounds and readings on the ambulance every day, make sure we had enough fuel, the oil was good, belts were good, all the things that you have to do. Medical kits were on board. So the mission critical mindset has been with me a long time. And then I started my first job at Sperry Corporation. I got an opportunity to work on the Trident II submarine and understand what cable harnessing and space and space constraints really mean. And then that job really got me into a different level of mission critical mindset. And during that job, I was very inquisitive. I would ask a lot of questions. And I remember my supervisor one day saying to me, "Why are you asking so many questions?" And I said, "Well, I want to understand how the business operates so I can do my job better." And that wasn't really a mindset with a lot of people. So that got me to thinking all through my career that, how do you transfer that knowledge? How do you ask the right questions? Being able to do critical thinking when you understand a complete picture. So then later on, after Sperry, I worked for, I might have the order out of place a little bit. I worked for a water utility. I worked for electric utility. I worked for Bankers Trust, Deutsche Bank, even a stint at SIAC, which was the sister company of the New York Stock Exchange. So during all of that journey, I learned a lot about operations. I was that person at 2 a.m. in the morning that needed to solve a problem. And when you didn't have the right process or procedures or drawings or escalation lists, you're by yourself. You're on your own. And it wasn't fun. These companies traded, hundreds of millions of dollars back then, trillions of dollars later on to the Fed, and there are enormous penalties if you didn't meet the timelines of when you had to have money transfer occur. So I've had a nice sampling in all different areas of critical infrastructure. And that later on brought me on to teaching at New York Institute of Technology. I also taught at Marist College, NYU, the International Building Engineers Union. They have a wonderful place in Crosby, Texas. I just have had the opportunity to not only get firsthand, hands-on experience with what is happening in the industry, but also to teach it and to learn from my students and the problems they were having. So I've been this mule gathering information and knowledge and trying to share it as much as I can throughout my whole career. And now here we are in the world of AI. So what's changed the most? Well, I'll tell you that a task that would have taken me a month to do years ago, now I'm able to do that in a few days. And so the AI piece is really an enormous help. And quite frankly, where we're going with AI, we've got a lot of problems in the world and we're not doing a good job solving them. So I really believe that AI can help uplift all society. I know people are worried about their jobs and what their career path is. And what I always say, and I tell it to my team all the time, as long as you continue to learn the continuous improvement process, you're always going to have a place to apply your skills. And what AI is doing for us today is it's really uplifting society and allowing us to use our true intellectual skills to solve problems. Let the AI do the hard work of structure and framework and all that. But guess what? You're only going to get there 60%. And if you think you're getting more than 60% for the type of operational work that we do, it's not the case, because this is where the human intelligence comes in. And this is where we really need to look at whatever is being produced by AI and how we are producing information and helping our clients and our corporations solve problems. It's imperative that we get that higher level of inference thinking so we round out whatever AI is producing and allowing us to focus more on strategic thought and consideration for what are the most important issues in the world. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but I wanted to kind of give you a journey of my career and where we are today. And obviously I've been running PMC now for the last 27, 28 years and having a blast doing it. Because I get to be in my innovative place with all of this experience, and it really allows me to share what's happening in the industry and how we can help resolve it.
So, Peter, it's super fascinating to hear about your background. A lot of parallels with family members touching the New York garment industry and financial services in Manhattan, and even have a family member who's EMT on her way to nursing. So, a lot of really, really interesting parallels. There was even a summer working. It was in Sperry, but Unisys in a call center and during college. But what I'm super fascinated about with AI infrastructure and the changes that it's making to how people look at digital infrastructure and physical infrastructure, how has this changed the kinds of conversations? How has AI changed the conversations that you're having with customers now?
Well, a lot of customers are now starting to get involved. A lot of corporations are, but they're a bit behind, I would say. I started playing with AI, it's got to be 10 years ago at Marist College with IBM Watson, and it's been on my mind probably for the last 15 years. If I go back to some of the articles I've written and discussions I've had, AI has been certainly integral in where I saw the future going. So, how has it changed from a client corporate perspective? People are now starting to catch up. They're now starting to realize what it can do, but people are also very afraid of what's unfolding right before our eyes and how quickly everything is evolving. And so I personally am not afraid of it. I think it's what we need at this time and place. From a client perspective, everyone has an assistant today. If you choose to use AI the way it could be used, everyone has an assistant, and everyone's IQ is above 160 if you want to use it to the level that you can, and even higher than that. So it's really incredible that from a change perspective, we went from an abacus to slide rules to calculators, and now we have everything that we need in our cell phones, which is like the size of a supercomputer was back 20 years ago. So it's pretty incredible, but there's a real opportunity here, and people need to embrace it and not be afraid of it and up their skills, because just like any technology that has come out over the years, you have an opportunity, and everyone will be fine. We will be fine as a society, but we need to use it in the right way. We need to have the proper safeguards, and with having the proper safeguards and railings on it, we could do just about anything we need to today. And something that would have taken us 10 years, whether it's a COVID vaccine or figuring out how to right-size Social Security or various health ailments people that have, these things are all going to be solved much, much faster. And quantum computing is just a handful of years away as well.
Peter, given your time at Marist College, you probably spent a lot of time with both traditional college students and non-traditional college students that are a little later on in their career. What's the one big tip or piece of advice you would give to someone that's curious about both technical and some of the less technical, more client-facing roles in the data center industry? In other words, like if you could go back and give advice to 18-year-old Peter Curtis or 25-year-old Peter Curtis, what would that advice be for someone that's curious about some of the more lucrative data center careers, especially ones that are a little bit less technical and a little more client-facing?
Yes, so that's very interesting, because I taught for over 25 years at NYIT, over 12 years at Marist College, spent some time at NYU, and the advice that I like to focus in on is continuous improvement process. Just because you finished college and you have a degree, it doesn't mean learning stops. In my eyes, learning is continuous. And that's one of the things the colleges need to do today, make continuous learning programs. Now, what is really interesting about the colleges today is when I was going to school, you wanted information, you went to the library, went to the card catalog, and you found your articles and you researched it that way. This information is so available today, and people, while they're going to high school and grade school, they should be, learning using the knowledge that's available online. And you just can't go into hibernation, learning hibernation when you finish school. You have to learn every day. If you're a real professional or a real skills trade person, you're reading, you're learning, and you're integrating what you're learning. There are a lot of people in the world that are very, very smart, but they need to learn how to apply that knowledge. And that's where what we need to do today with the kids. So the advice is continuous improvement, but the kids need they need mentors, they need coaches, and this is where college can really fill that gap. And again, it's that next level of inference learning. So there were, not many, but there were some professors that I've seen and heard and regurgitating the same material year after year after year, and they had their lesson plan. They didn't really modify it much. That's not today's society. We've got to be fluid in knowledge, education, knowledge transfer, which is what we're going through in our industry right now, with half the people leaving, and industry at least doubling in size. And that was before AI came onto the map over here, the technology, the global technology roadmap. So we were doubling in size before that, and we were losing half the industry before that. Now you have all these hyperscale data centers. How do you teach the kids coming out of school about this? And that's where we get the knowledge transfer. And this is honestly why I do what I do, because I want to leave a legacy of really good content for that next generation professional, skills person, tradesperson, because everybody's important. Everyone has a role, and everybody needs to continue to be involved and not just sit in the back, in a backstage, but get involved. Provide a intelligent opinion. Think through a problem. Again, 2:00 in the morning when you're by yourself and you're trying to solve a problem, let me tell you, that's not fun. And I've lived those situations many times, more than I wanted. And I always said to myself, even when I was 40 years younger, I always said, if I ever have a chance, I'm going to make sure that the next person that takes my position is fully onboarded before I even leave the job.
So in an area where SOPs used to be in a 3-ring binder to an area now where there's even AI tools that watch what you're doing and write the SOPs for you, more important than ever, right? For being able to scale.
It's interesting. The SOPs, yeah, AI can write some level of SOP, but it's got to be site specific, and you've got to. It could be one thing you leave out, which could kill a person, and
literally,
it's. And I've seen. Let me tell you. I mean, a good friend of mine years ago got electrocuted because the proper lockout tagout was removed. It was in place, but it was removed before he was out of the switchgear, and he got burned over 60-70% over his whole body. And during that time I said, you know what, I'm writing a whole safety section in the book. And so as I've had these experiences and observations, the only thing I could do is think about it, write about it, and make sure that the next person in line is more prepared. So writing a MOP is good, but you've got to know what you're doing. You've got to know what the output of that needs to be. Otherwise, it means nothing. Missing one step is imperative when you're doing a life safety type program.
Yeah, I learned about arc flash from about 10 years ago. I was at a small data center conference, and someone was working on a solid state circuit breaker specifically to protect against that, because most of my background prior to that with data centers was on the IT side, on IT support and network admin. But yeah, it's a really, really important thing. You mentioned something too about books. I know you've been a fan of packaging this together into traditional books. Can you talk through a little bit about what that journey has been like for you with making that decision and how you've managed to put these projects together and keep them current over time?
Well, I've always, because of my brother and, taking care of him as a young person and being involved with technology, I had to be innovative. I had to think outside the box. And so because of that background, it really got me thinking about how do you bundle a package together? And part of what we're doing at PMC is, I do this on my dime, and because this is what the world needs. And a lot of the passion that I have comes out of an event that happened in 2001, and that was 9/11. I was in the Trade Center that day, and I could say I was buried in rubble, and I didn't think I would be here. And my promise was during that day, and I stuck to it throughout the decades, is that I will do whatever I can to help society and that next generation of people to really get acclimated to what this industry is all about and how it's evolving. So this bundle of packages of smart solutions that I've developed with my team over the years is, we have to train people. So we have a tool called the Smart Walk. We have to operate the critical infrastructures. We have a tool for that. It's called Smart. So Smart Team is the education. Smart Walk's the operations, and we have Smart View, which is visualization, and then we have all the things that hang off that. And so it's the IoT pieces, it's the operational pieces with MOPS and other things you need. It's your playbook for critical infrastructure is what I've built. And now we have the ability to take all that knowledge and have a proper conversation with AI about the mission critical industry. And that's what I'm working on now. Regarding trying at some point to retire, no way. This is such an exciting industry. And we're in the now of what's going on around the world. And to be able to contribute to a major problem that touches more than 60% of the world's population, what's more purposeful to do than that?
Yeah, it's in many ways you've been preparing your entire career for the moment we've been going through for the last year or two, and we'll probably be going through for at least the rest of the decade.
That's exactly right. And, I do it because I want to do it, and I'm motivated, and I'm passionate about it, and it's purposeful work.
Speaking of purpose, we just talked about your advice for people that are relatively early on in their career, maybe people that are in late teens, early 20s, trying to figure out what their first couple of moves should be. What about someone that's more mid-career? Maybe you work with them 10, 15, 20 years ago. You haven't seen them in a while. You bump into them at a conference or at the airport. You get together and have some over breakfast or coffee, and you sense that they're a little bit burned out. They're trying to figure out what to do next. What advice would you give to a colleague, someone that used to be pretty friendly with, that seems like they're a little lost, but really trying to figure out what the second half of their career should look like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the way this has happened already. First of all, don't get down on yourself. Don't put yourself in a position where you feel like you can't go to the next step. You really need to find out what you're passionate about and go for it. Go learn as much as you can about it. And that's very easy today with all the different YouTube videos out there, all the different knowledge that's available. Don't be complacent. I had a conversation with a colleague of mine just a few days ago. And I said that, listen, what you knew, the person said to me, well, I don't have that skill set. I said, you got to stop that. You don't have the skill set because you haven't picked up a book, you haven't read an article, you haven't done what you needed to do to stay evolve in the industry. So just do that little bit of reading, find out what you're passionate about, and just go for it. Don't be afraid. Don't get down on yourself if you don't make it the first time. If you keep on trying and you're persistent, you'll get there. And so my advice is you got to get out of your little shell and open up your purview to what's going on in the world. And how can your skills that you have marry with AI and other areas of this industry where you could be happy? All people, if I'm hiring somebody, I want to hire someone that's a continuous learner. And it doesn't impact me if they don't have a 4-year college degree. What I want is a person that wants to continue to learn. And you could see when you look at the resume, okay, they graduated college with this degree, they have a graduate degree, and they may have some other credentials, but what other learning have you done since you got your last degree? And that to me is a telltale sign. If you don't have that continuous learning on your resume, well, then how can I bring someone into my company when, I could see the path and the journey that they took. And so you have to just kind of put that resume aside. You can't have an excuse, well, I've been working too hard. It doesn't take more than 15 minutes to read an article. You just have to show that you have a professional career and you want to continuously learn and improve so you meet the needs of society and where society is at the time we are right now.
I always tell people too that you can't really even use budget or employer as an excuse anymore. Sure, formal degree programs and certificate programs from prestigious colleges and universities definitely help. And there's a handful of great training and education companies in the data center industry with formal courses. But even if you don't have that budget, everyone has access to YouTube. Everyone has access to podcasts. Everyone has access to inexpensive subscriptions like Google Career and Udemy and Coursera and LinkedIn Learning. And frankly, if someone did nothing else than listen to 50 episodes of the interviews that I have with great thought leaders like Peter Curtis, they would learn a ton every year. And for the not having time, my usual question is, do you have a fitness routine? Do you go to the gym? Do you bike? Do you jog? Do you walk? Okay, great. You don't have to watch the videos. Just put them in your ears. I always tell people too, I eat my own dog food when it comes to this. It's not 100% of the time when I'm doing professional development, when I'm out for my morning walk. Some days I'd rather listen to 80s and 90s music, but probably at least 10, 15 hours a month, I'm listening to podcasts, listening to webinar recordings. And over the course of the year, you just found 50 or 100 hours. And for people that travel a lot for work, whether it's commuting, whether it's sitting at airport gates, on flights, yeah, you're not going to want to do that stuff 100% of the time, but there's a couple dozen hours a year for professional development.
That's exactly right. And I do the same thing. And
most data center GTM teams are flying completely blind. 83% of your buyer's journey is happening before they even speak with someone from your sales team. The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is powered by DCSMI. We've studied over 1,900 industry leaders to build a diagnostic framework that identifies exactly why deals fall apart and revenue stalls. Stop guessing and start benchmarking. Subscribe now to our weekly Data Center GTM briefing at www.dcsmi.com/briefing. Again, that's dcsmi.com/briefing. BRIEFING.
You said something very important. Exercise. Exercise is key. And if you're not exercising at least 3 or 4 times a week, whatever it is, do something. It doesn't matter what it is. The exercise is feeding your brain. It's creating endorphins. It's allowing a person to kind of take that break, refresh, and come back stronger in a day. So exercise is so important. And just if you're in a corporate environment, take a walk around the city or take a walk around, find something to do every day. And it doesn't matter. It's just you have to do something.
Yeah. And if it's not, it doesn't have to be that intense, like half hour, 45 minutes of walking at a brisk pace. And you can make it social too. I know people that walk with colleagues. I know people that walk and they have their AirPods in and they're taking work calls and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm a huge believer of multitasking and double dipping and getting the daily cardio routine to match up with the professional development. Like I said, I'm not perfect either. There are days, probably 1 or 2 days out of the 7 a week, where definitely I need to decompress and completely unplug from work. But there's a significant chunk of the time where, and over the course of the year, those habits really add up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the reading, listening to podcasts like such as your podcast, they're great to continue to learn. And before you know it, the words are just coming off the tip of your tongue if you're putting your time in. And it's not a lot of time. I mean, for me, I do about 2 hours of reading a day. And that's not work related. It's just learning and continuing to be sure that I'm in sync with where society is going. But I really feel that the exercise, the learning, is all part of that continuous improvement, and it keeps you healthy. And listen, today we have an opportunity, if we want to live way beyond 100. And my goal is 125 right now. That could change depending upon the mood of the world, but there's no reason why you can't. And you keep your body structured like your body is a critical infrastructure. When you look at a critical infrastructure, you have your spleen. That's the storage tank for energy. That's you're kind of like your capacitor. You start to compare body parts with critical infrastructure parts, and there's a lot of commonality. All the wire in the buildings and the fiber, that's your nerve system. You want to keep all that stuff working well, and if you don't keep it working well, then you become part of the medical industry in a way that you wouldn't want to be.
Yeah, I think too, if there's someone watching or listening to this right now that's a product manager for Fitbit or MyFitnessPal, or on the other side, on the learning and development side, whether it's Audible or Coursera or Google Career or something, there's an enormous opportunity to marry those two things together to get people that are tracking their calories and their heart rate and everything to be thinking about professional improvement, and vice versa.
Well, I mean, funny you say that. I'm wearing, I don't know if you can see it. This is an Oura ring.
I've heard about
that. And at some point, whether it's this or Fitbit or something else, we're going to integrate that with our smart solutions. And if you think about what was happening during COVID, people going to work, they had COVID, and then they infected other people. But what we were doing back then is we were looking at the temperature range of a person. And if you had a temperature, you would want to get an alert. But you got to go through the human resources with that piece. But with smart solutions, we're integrating robotics, wearables, the new Meta Glass. Apple's coming out with something at the end of this year, early next year. Those are all tools that the industry can embrace. Even wearable gear. All of this is tools. Remember, one of the challenges we have in our industry is we work in a very, very stressful environment. But you have to manage your own stress, and you have to understand how you react and respond to problems. And now, obviously, if you don't have the right tools, the right technology, the right techniques in-house, the right onboarding programs, well, you have a problem, and that's going to create stress levels much higher than you could imagine. And I think we have an opportunity as an industry, as we take some of these wearables and we start incorporating it into various scenarios and how we are reacting and responding. There's a real important health piece to this that we all need to be considering. And being in an industry like this, where we're still evolving, I could tell you, a lot of companies don't have playbooks, and they don't have operational onboarding training programs. There's so much that they don't have, and they're throwing people into the fire. And you have young kids managing $1 billion budget, and they don't have the background yet. They're learning, they're trying to be able to get to that point. At least you have to have a really good level of intelligence, but they don't have all the right skill set. And this is where the problem is in the industry. When you look at classical computing data centers, colos, hyperscale data centers, it doesn't matter. We've got to be able to run these, because without running these critical infrastructures, we're in a stone age overnight. And it can happen in very different ways. And we just need to be prepared and have that scenario type training and look at the digital twins and how would a digital twin help a young engineer coming into the industry learn, and how would you use that digital twin? How would you create the scenarios that you need? And it's like a game. And so what we need to do is take those scenarios, put it into a gaming environment where the kids could learn with something that they're already accustomed to doing. And rather than killing all these people with these games, let's do something, build a city. SimCity was something years ago, but let's build a critical infrastructure and have 200 scenarios that you have to go through and look at what's happening most in your facility. Get trained on those scenarios first so you can operate your critical infrastructure without fear. AI is not taking over the critical infrastructure just yet. In some ways, yes, it's providing good insight, recommendations, and feedback. But again, you have to know, does that feedback really make sense? And again, only if you have a proper coach, a proper mentor, you have that ability to understand if you are really understanding a scenario and how to respond situationally. And so this is really, really important. The gaming part of this could be a real good and fun way to do it. So why wouldn't the colleges have digital twins and teaching this to the students? Whether you're trying to explain something on a psychometric chart, on humidity dew point and coolness, or you're trying to look at a UPS system with power quality issues, problems and solutions, this all can be mirrored in a digital twin. And this is a real opportunity for the colleges to get a hold of some of the software and start creating it in a environment. And so I'm looking forward to seeing that happening. I still sit on a couple of college boards, and I'm providing these recommendations. And I did also 10 years ago, but now everyone's ready to hear it. It's tough being a pioneer. You get a lot of arrows in your back, but ultimately, there's not a lot of people that have the breadth of knowledge that I have that could say the things that I say with the confidence that I do, because I've lived through the situations.
The arrows in your back reminds me of the scene at the end of the Moneyball movie where Brad Pitt's sitting in the press box at Fenway Park and talking specifically about that you're messing with decades of institutional knowledge of baseball. I think about the parallels of professional football, professional baseball, and how they've been IoTing enabling the players in football for probably 10 years, and baseball in the last few. But if I think about too, if you want to be able to reach that next generation in digital twins and IoT, like maybe the future of the simulations looks a lot more like Roblox or Fortnite or something, reaching them literally where they are in late teens with the platforms already on. Peter, when you look at like what's going on big picture in the industry on a global basis, what do you think is the biggest mistake or oversight that you see being made across the board about where the industry needs to go next? If you had to distill it down to one central shortcoming where you think you could really change where the global data center industry is going?
We have a few different problems, and it's a real loaded question because there's a lot of different answers to it. And it starts with energy. What are we going to do about the energy issues that we have? I think every solution has many different elements to it. So when you think about energy, obviously small modular reactors is a green element of that. Wind power, photovoltaics, solar power, geothermal technology. There's solutions there, but it can't meet the load because of the land requirements for that. Fuel cells, a real good opportunity with fuel cells and utilizing it. Again, think about the geographic area that you're in and what's most prevalent from an energy resource, whether it's hydro, fuel cells, small modular reactors. Utilities doing what they can. I'm surprised the utilities haven't gotten into the critical infrastructure industry more than they have, because it's another business line. I look at as convenience power and pure power. I think the utilities are missing the boat on opportunities in the critical infrastructure industry. And what's happening now is because the utilities can't provide the energy, now the corporations building the hyperscale data centers are building it. So that's one issue. The other issue is people. We don't have enough skilled people. We have people, but we don't have enough skilled people that are intelligent enough about the situational awareness you need to have to operate these critical infrastructures. So you have the people problem. The other piece is operationally, we don't have the right information on these sites. We don't have the owner's manual. You spend $50,000 on a car, if you can even buy a car for $50,000 today. You spend $50,000 and it comes with an owner's manual. You spend $2 billion to build out a critical infrastructure. There's no owner's manual. You've got the reports and you got everything here, there, and everywhere, but you don't have what you need to train that person and people that need to run it for its life cycle. So that's a big problem. And then I hate to say it, but and I don't mean it in any derogatory way, but the people that manage the money don't really understand when they value engineer specific items out of a basis of design. That's a real problem in the industry, and we have people making decisions that aren't really astute to the situational awareness that you need to have to be sure that that data center, that hyperscale data center, doesn't go down. And again, approving the operational budgets so there's enough money in there to do what you need to do for the life cycle of your investment. So when you think about it, we're spending 90% on the overall infrastructure and everything, and very little goes to the operational piece in consideration while you're building that infrastructure. And where does all the downtime come from? Still, it's human error, 65%, and that number could even be higher. But Uptime Institute, references 65%, and I've seen it myself. We get a call from a client. What happened? Why was that UPS on bypass for 2 weeks? You're doing rounds and meetings, but why didn't anyone notice that it was on bypass? So you have those problems. So I answered part of your question, but I might have left a little bit out, and maybe you could tell me what I left out.
I think the challenge with all of this is the technology is changing so rapidly that the human part of it is lagging anywhere from a little bit to a lot. And I think the transformation is something that people are focusing so much on supply chain shortages and focusing on velocity, on what people have even called the gold rush at this point, the AI gold rush, and the community pushback. There's so many complex things going on at once that getting companies aligned seems to be something that's falling by the wayside. Even in the sector that I specialize in, where there's hundreds of millions of dollars a year being invested in big global and national conferences, there's generally a burying the head in the sand going on that, wait a second, the IT buyers and engineers on the decision committees, they're doing a ton of research before they get to you because of generative AI. Maybe we need to adapt, and we shouldn't be marketing and selling the same way we have for the last 10 years. I, for the most part, have an extraordinarily uphill battle with even getting people to acknowledge that reality. And if it was done well, there's a lot of companies that are saving their commercial teams from facing layoffs when they reinvent account executives and account managers to be more like teachers and consultants and subject matter experts and trusted advisors. But I think there's so much calendar displacement going on now, where 45, 48 weeks of the year being spent on the road, chasing the next booth and chasing the next event, that a lot of people are missing the big picture of some of these changes. It's another supply chain challenge.
Well, it's interesting, the travel. I used to do a lot of travel. I still do, but not to the degree that I used to. And I've been so productive over the last 3 years since COVID, and we went virtual, and the travel. It just wipes out a lot of your quality work time. And yeah, you can do things on a plane, you can do things in a hotel. It's not the same as when you're back at the office.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people aren't realizing is that for most of these events, there's a day on each side in addition to the 3 days for travel. If you're exhibiting, there's a day with load in and setting up the booth and taking all that stuff down. There's the 3-day sprint before the event to book enough meetings to justify being at the event in the first place. And then you come back and there's the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday getting back to normal. So each one of these cycles for the 3-day event is about 2 weeks. So you do 2 of those every single month, like when you have time to do your real job. I think in larger companies where they can afford to have dedicated evangelists whose primary job is attending, speaking on panels, speaking at events, and doing press interviews, great, fine, because they're on a team that's got hundreds of people and they can afford to allocate 10% of headcount to this. In smaller companies, I got to question the sanity of and then on top of that, there's a talent displacement challenge with all of this, because all of a sudden, by creating these jobs that have a 50% travel requirement, you're knocking out some of the best talent that's mid-career, that's got all this experience, but can't, without completely trashing their family, mom, dad, kid responsibilities, take a career that requires that they're 50%, 75% travel.
And the work-life balance is important, because that's a stress too, especially for young families. You need that balanced work approach. And that's why I know a lot of people don't agree with the virtual environments, but I think there's some level of hybridness that makes sense, and then you get that work-life balance. But yeah, as an employee, I mean, if you have the opportunity to have a virtual environment, a hybrid environment, you've got to appreciate that, and you've got to really thank your company for allowing you to do that. But you have a responsibility on your end to make sure that you're an exempt employee and you're working this job. Put a little extra time in. Make sure that you're being. When I was working in New York City, I mean, I would commute 3 hours a day, and it was just part of what you did. And how many years did I do that for? Many, many, many years. That's real productive time. And by the way, when I was commuting that time, I was listening to my books on tape and learning. And
it was literally tape, right? Before the iPod and before Wi-Fi and everything. I used to do New Jersey Transit for a couple of years from Metro Park and then from Middletown. And the challenge was, if it got ever so slightly off and you missed the connecting train, it threw everything off on both sides. So, and if you worked late, you got the car voucher, but then, okay, you're burned out because you're getting home 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And then your colleagues are annoyed that you didn't magically go on 4 hours of sleep and get back for 8 o'clock the next morning. So it's a balancing act all around. What I see now working really well, and I think could work even better if there was more adoption of it, is taking some of the global national and bringing some of it back into micro events. Because the person that can't do the 50 or 75% travel that can be in the office 3 days a week would be phenomenal at running these targeted lunch and learns and breakfast seminars, a webinar series, sitting right on top of their target accounts. And they could for sure be in the office and go to local events where they're sleeping in their own bed 2, 3, 4 days of the week. The stress and the killer and the breaking point is spending all the time on TSA lines and all the time traveling and all the friction that goes along with that. So I think there's a lot. And what the CFOs and the boards love about that is you can do a ton of your own micro events for the perfect people for a fraction of the cost of the broad events. But again, these are big transformation cultural shifts. I spend a lot of time talking about these because it's a huge part. It's not just the data center industry, it's the whole tech industry and travel.
One thing we didn't talk about today that I was thinking about, some of the articles that you read, people may be saying you're overbuilding some of the hyperscale data centers. People are doing the land grab and just making sure that they're into play for the next generation. But what I don't think a lot of people realize is that when we have autonomous driving that is more rolled out than it is right now, that's going to take huge compute power. but it's going to save lives. It's going to reduce insurance costs. It's going to probably save on energy because people are driving more. The autonomous driving is more consistent. So we need to think about that. We need to think about what it's going to do for the healthcare industry. We need to think about how it's going to help the education and training. And I think education and training is a really important piece over here. Think about when you're in high school and you feel like you're not very smart because people are learning faster than you, or the teacher may be speaking a little fast and you're not grasping it. Now you can go home and you could go on Khan Academy, or you can watch a YouTube video and learn it over and over. And then you come back to class the next day and you have what you need. Well, this is, so that kid, that young adult that is in these classes, they now feel better about themselves and they're not getting into trouble and not going down a path in a road that's not good. And it only takes a second to ruin someone's life. And if you can kind of keep the young adults more on track and they feel good about themselves, I think AI can really have a good place in society for that. And again, this is where the coaches and the mentors in the schools could really help that next generation of young adult, have a really fruitful life.
It's really interesting that you bring that up, Peter, because my kids are literally straddling that line. One finished up high school on, Florida has one of the best online virtual schools, free public schools in the country. It's called Florida Virtual School. I think there's roughly 400,000 students in it. It's phenomenal how successful they've been. One did that out of necessity during COVID. And the other one that's young, 5 years younger, is doing traditional. So I've gotten to see the compare contrast in real time. And the interesting part with the on-demand is there's never a grumpy teacher who had a fight with their spouse the night before, had a stressful drive-in traffic or something and taking it on the kids. There's never a kid in the class that's acting out. It is the perfect version of that lesson that they can watch over and over and over again. And if it's going too slow, they watch it at 150%. If they need to watch it 2, 3, 4 times, if they're not feeling well and they missed a week and they need to compress 2 or 3 weeks of learning, it's so much more. And then when you get school districts that are complaining about real estate costs and salaries and all that, it's another solution. I think colleges are going through that as well now, where I see some kids that are on Zoom classes and virtual classes, and they can have so much more enrollment because they're not limited by how many chairs are in the lecture hall.
But the colleges get afraid because they think they don't have that reach, and you really do have a reach, and we just need to change our mindset.
Peter, the final area I want to ask you about today is when you look into your crystal ball with a 12, 18, 24-month time horizon, what do you think is going to change most about growing a company like PMC Group that's going to completely surprise the rest of the industry? What's coming next?
Well, you can do a lot with less people. That's for sure. So I think, but you can advance. And so over the next year, the corporations are obviously more involved day to day with AI. So that's really good. They have it, they understand it, and they understand the value. The people entering the job market have a real unique opportunity to learn about a particular company and what they're doing just by watching and reading the various media that's out there. We're over this next year, we're going to come together a bit more on the AI frontier, and we're going to be less afraid. But there's settling that's going on, foundation settling that's happening over the next year to 2 years, and that will disrupt some people and some companies. I do feel like a lot of companies that don't embrace AI will end up like Sears. Remember, they had the catalog. They were Amazon back in the day, and they're not even around anymore. So the people that sit on these boards, they really need to maybe in some cases, if they're not continuously learning, they need to refresh the boards. Otherwise, a lot of companies will find that they're losing their market position, and that's if they're lucky. So we really need to, snap out of it. This is the new world. Embrace AI. How can it help my company? How can it help me personally? How can it help me professionally? And embrace it and just move on with this next generation of evolution. That's one part of it. The other part is we have to make sure we got the safety guards in place. And I look at this being akin to, let's say, the Food and Drug Administration, although not perfect at all. The process that they go through to review a drug and make sure it reaches market. Well, with certain algorithms, I think we need to have some type of committee where it's corporate, it's educational, we kind of combine the government, we combine the major stakeholders, and we make sure we get the proper safeguards on, and really look at what's best for the world. And we're not going to slow down AI, even though it's in discussions today. Let's slow down. Anthropic is talking about that. No, we're not. We could pause a release, but we're not going to slow down the development. Otherwise, you're really behind very, very quickly, and we don't want that to happen either.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love the example too with Sears and how they could have had 90% market share because they were decades ahead of Amazon. I was talking about that exact same example with my son last weekend. We were talking about how Kodak could have had near monopolistic market share in digital cameras, how Blockbuster Video could have been Netflix. Yes. Like they all had to start to be able to buy these companies for about the story where Yahoo could have almost bought Google. It's insane to think about the almost coulda, woulda, shouldas, and the orchestration that you talked about too with aligning the different stakeholders. I think is a huge part of figuring all this out. We track like 57 different sectors in this industry. Mm-hmm. It's insane what the opportunities look like, but the fragmentation challenges are just as for in many cases, some people see as insurmountable, some people see them as all of the opportunity as being able to figure out how to make the ecosystem work.
And so we have so many challenges, but we have a real good tool now to solve this. So I think us as a society, we just need to get our heads on straight and focus on the problems and be productive in how we solve them. And we go ahead 5 years, we will have, I would hope, a better society than we have right now if we keep our heads on straight.
Peter, this has been phenomenal. I've really enjoyed learning about your background and getting your insights about what people should be thinking out of different parts of their career, how you've taken a mindset towards solving problems and being able to communicate that with different stakeholders to be able to have much more consistent outcomes. I love the conversation that we've had about AI and disruption and the future of education. For anyone that's watching, definitely check out Peter's book on maintaining mission critical systems in a 24/7 environment that's published by Wiley. We'll include a link to that in the show notes. If someone wants to follow what other initiatives, what other projects you're working on, or learn more about PMC Group, is LinkedIn a good place to start?
LinkedIn's a good place to start, but my website, pmcgroupone1.com, is a great learning tool as well. And we really try to provide an insight of what's happening in the industry. So just go onto the website. And then, the other thing I want to throw out there, if there's people that can't afford to get trained properly in this industry, I'm giving away free online classes to the kids that want to learn about critical infrastructure. And so this is something that is kind of paying forward to society. And they could reach out to me at pcurtis@pmcgroupone.com. And I'm happy to do that. It's part of what I love to do and help that next generation and pay forward.
That is fantastic. We'll make sure to include links to your LinkedIn profile and your LinkedIn company page and your website and your book. And for anyone that isn't on LinkedIn, they can feel free to reach out to you by email as well. I usually leave the emails off because I know people would appreciate probably getting less email from AI-driven email. But for people that are watching and listening, Peter just gave you his personal direct email if you're interested in being able to take advantage of that tremendous growth career opportunity as well. Peter's been phenomenal. I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today on the podcast. I've been speaking with Peter Curtis, who is the CEO and growth strategist and visionary at PMC Group. Thanks so much for joining, Peter. Really appreciate it.
It was absolutely my pleasure, and thank you for inviting me. And good luck to the world.
Most data center GTM teams are flying completely blind. 83% of your buyer's journey is happening before they even speak with someone from your sales team. The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is powered by DCSMI. We've studied over 1,900 industry leaders to build a diagnostic framework that identifies exactly why deals fall apart and revenue stalls. Stop guessing and start benchmarking. Subscribe now to our weekly Data Center GTM briefing at www.dcsmi.com/briefing. Again, that's dcsmi.com/briefing, BRIEFING.